Hi everyone, Vaibhav Patel. I'm a registered migration agent at Aussies Group. Today we are going to cover a live topic about employer sponsorship visas. So without wasting any time, I'll probably brief you about the visa subclasses under the employer sponsored visa category. There are three categories majorly, which is subclass 482, subclass 186, and subclass 187. Now, subclass 482 would, uh, if you just talk about, let's say, 482, which used to be known as a subclass 457 visa, which was very famous in its time. So now to get a 482 visa, which used to be 457 before, now the applicant needs to meet the certain requirements, obviously. And there have been a lot of changes from 18th of March 2018 in this visa. So to get this visa approval, the employer has to agree to sponsor you, and the employers will have to also meet certain requirements to be able to sponsor any candidate. Now, this visa is generally designed for an employer to address the skill shortages in their company. Now, to get this 482 visa, the first requirement is that the company has to launch a sponsorship application. Now, the sponsorship includes that the company will have to provide an evidence that the company is operating lawfully in Australia. Now, to prove that the company is operating lawfully in Australia, the company will have to provide an evidence that they are registered in Australia, so like providing an ABN, ACN, business name registration, or lease agreements and things like this. And they will also have to provide an evidence that they are operating lawfully, like, for example, providing their business activity statements, all the financial documents basically, like profit and loss, balance sheets, and other financial documents, just to show that their company is in profit and they can afford to sponsor someone because they will be paying high salary to these people as well. Now, there is a training benchmark requirement which is likely to be removed very soon and then be added in a nomination application, which is the second stage of getting the 482 visa approval. Now, a 482 visa is also known as a TSS. So, now in this, so I'll probably be using TSS word from now on. So for TSS, the company, for now, the company have to, in the sponsorship application, company will have to prove that they have been meeting the training benchmark requirement, which is that the company has to provide, the company has two options basically. So the company has to provide, option one is that the company will have to spend at least 1% of total payroll of the company, including superannuation, payments to contractors, and all those payroll altogether, and provide an evidence that the company has spent at least 1% of this money of this payroll to train their staff, which is or employees who are an Australian citizen or permanent residents. The money that they have spent cannot be used towards training an overseas employee. It has to be used for training of an Australian employee, which is either citizen or permanent resident. Or the company has another option, which is contributing 2% to the industrial training fund, which is simply donating money to the TAFE or any other organization which is approved for the training benchmark A. And that's pretty much it for the sponsorship. And generally, sponsorships are not really refused in most of the cases, unless you do make some sort of big error. But generally, sponsorships are not that complex to get processed. Now, moving further, the next stage for TSS visa to get approval is the nomination. Now, in the nomination stage, the company has to first identify an occupation in which the company is willing to sponsor some candidate. Like, for example, if it is a restaurant, then they might be sponsoring a cook, or they might be sponsoring a restaurant, or they might be sponsoring a chef. So they will have to nominate one occupation that, depending on what skill shortages the company is facing, and then the company will have to do a labor market testing for that. So labor market testing includes the advertising the position online and then trying to look for an Australian citizens or permanent residents. And if they cannot find any Australian citizen or permanent resident, then they can go ahead and say that we cannot find any local person who is an Australian citizen or permanent resident. That's why we are looking to sponsor someone from overseas. Now, so labor market testing would probably include, let's say, advertising the position on SIG.com or any other websites similar to SIG.com, like Career One or other websites as well. Generally, department does not like to see the free advertisements, such as or the advertisements on Gumtree and etc., because that is not a specifically career oriented websites or not job search websites. And there is also a website called jobsearch.gov.au, which is generally a government's website, which is accepted. Now, moving forward, the company has to also provide an explanation on what jobs and what roles and responsibilities this person who's being sponsored will carry out, and what is the requirement of this role. So the company will have to provide a position description, which includes a detailed explanation on what duties that person will be doing on day to day and everything. Now, these duties has to match the answer ESCO code description for the occupation that they have chosen. Like, for example, if you're talking about cook, then they will have to provide an evidence that the company, the person who will be doing the job will be working as a cook and then doing the duties which are related to answer ESCO description mentioned in the for the cook. Now, moving forward, they also need to provide an evidence that they have an employment agreement in place with the candidate who is being sponsored. Now, this employment agreement does have to be according to, or let's say, it needs to be in in accordance with the fair work. So basically, the terms and conditions mentioned in this employment agreement has to be something which is being offered to Australian citizens as well, or let's say which is compliant with the fair work policies. Now, the person has to get at least minimum threshold of 53,900. That's the minimum salary that the sponsor has to pay the employee. If the salary is below this amount, then they might not meet the requirement for an approval. A lot of people get confused here that they do include superannuation in 53,900, or they also includes, let's say, bonuses and everything. But generally, the department has clearly mentioned that the base rate has to be 53,900. So if the base rate is not 53,900, then the candidate would not meet the requirement. But let's say, for example, someone's getting a base rate of $50,000, but after the bonuses and superannuation and everything, they might be reaching to 65 or 70,000, but that's not accepted. The reason is because it's not a guaranteed amount or guaranteed salary that you would be getting. And now, furthermore, after this, the next document that the company has to provide is that the evidence that the company has a genuine need of this position. So the first thing that the company has to provide is that the position fits within this business. So let's say, for example, a big office with 20, let's say 200 people, employees, they cannot say, okay, we need cook because we want to probably cook for our team members for lunch and dinner, and then they can justify the position of cook. No, that's not fine, because that's not the scope of the business. Business might be providing some other services which is not in relation to cooking. But yes, if the restaurant wants to sponsor a cook, that makes sense, because the restaurant really need the cook to run their business and make a profits out of it. So if the restaurant wants to sponsor a cook, for example, they will have to provide an explanation that this position fits in the business, how it fits in the business, why this position is important, and how this position would contribute to the business growth. Now, these are the basic requirements for the nomination. And now, generally, most of the refusals that people get in 482 visa, or let's say people used to get in 457 visa, is this nomination option, nomination requirement. And generally, nomination is refused because the case officer or the Department of Immigration is not satisfied that the person meets or the company has a genuine need of the sponsor, of the employee who is being sponsored. Now, why is because then, let's say the company's financials are not strong, the payroll doesn't seem to be very strong, and then the company is not able to show that they are making profits out of it, so the department may not be satisfied that the company would be able to pay this person who is being nominated right now for the permanent for the duration of the next 2 years of employment. So that's the reason generally the department usually refuses the application. Or the second reason generally that we have seen, most of the common reasons is not meeting the position descriptions. So let's say the position description provided in the application does not match the NZESCO description of that occupation. That is another reason, a common reason for the refusal of nomination. So major reasons for refusal of nomination, and the most important part of this 482 visa or TSS visa, or which previously 457 visa, was the nomination. Now, in the nomination application, generally, this is the most important part of your visa application, because if the nomination is approved, generally there are not many complications in visa or the sponsorship application. There is first, so there are 3 stages. SBS nomination and visa. SBS is quite easy. Nomination bit complex because of the requirement for position descriptions and explanation on how the position fits in the business. If the business is able to justify that the position is required for the business and this business can afford to pay the nominee the salary that they have nominated, then there is no problem. Now, the visa application is quite simple. The applicant has to provide an evidence that the applicant has IELTS minimum 5.5 overall with minimum 4.5, and the applicant has to provide an evidence that the applicant has relevant skills and qualification to perform the nominated role. If it is cook, let's say the applicant has to have certificate 4 in commercial cookery or something. Also, the NAV in 482, which is TSS visa, this is the main difference in 482 and the other application is that the 457 visa application is that the applicant has to prove that the applicant has at least 2 years of employment or 2 years of experience in the relevant field. So basically, the applicant has to prove that the applicant has 2 years full-time work experience prior to lodgement of the visa. Now, in these 2 years, a lot of people get confused that whether it has to be full-time or part-time. A lot of agents also have mentioned that in their previous videos that it's part-time, and the department has not clarified on this. No, actually, that's wrong information. There is a clarification in the policy that department has mentioned. Yes, there is there is nothing mentioned about full-time or part-time employment in the legislation or in the regulations. But the policy has clearly mentioned that the person has to have at least 2 years full-time work experience. So if it is not full-time, it cannot be counted. However, if you have a part-time work experience, you don't have to worry, but you can count, let's say, equivalent to full-time work experience. So that means if you have 2 years part-time work experience, it is equal to 1 year full-time work experience, right? So if to meet 2 years full-time work experience, someone has to work 4 years part-time. Or even you can have a combination. Let's say you worked 3 years altogether. Out of that 3 years, you worked 2 years part-time, which is equal to 1 year full-time, and you worked another 1 year full-time. So that's altogether out of these 3 years, you met 2 years full-time work requirements. You can still apply for the 482 visa. Now the 482 visa duration has also changed. Like in the past, 457 visa used to be granted for 4 years, up to 4 years. Doesn't matter what occupation you have. Now the duration of the 482 visa, which is TSS, has changed depending on which occupation you nominate and whether your occupation is on MLTSSL or STSL. So if your occupation is on STSL for a 482 visa, then you only get 2 years visas. If your occupation is on the MLTSSL, which is the main list for 482 visa, you can get up to 4 years visa if your company is happy to nominate you for 4 years. Now, this is about 482 visa. I hope that this clarifies all your doubts. Now, moving further, we will now, because I can see that a lot of people have commented that what about ENS and 186 visa? Yes, we are going to cover those next now. Now, moving forward to 186 visa. 186 visa has 2 streams. Number 1 is TRT, which is for the people who have been on 457 visa or 482 visa before, or the direct entry stream, which is the available for anybody who wants to apply for a direct entry stream if they meet the requirement. Now, let's go with the TRT first. So people who have been granted a 457 visa on or before 2017 April, they can directly apply for TSS visa the TRT 186, even if they have their occupation is not on the list, and they will only have to meet 2 years requirement. So basically, someone is on 457 visa who got the 457 visa before April 2017 needs to meet the requirement that they have completed 2 years of employment with the sponsor on the 457 visa while holding the 457 visa, and that does not matter whether their occupation is removed from the list or it is on the list. As long as they have met 2 years of work on 45 while holding the 457 visa, there is no problem. They will have to apply for 186, and they can apply for 186 TRT. Now, in TRT application, there are 2 applications to get the TRT approval. Number 1 is nomination. Number 2 is the visa application. Now, in the nomination application, the applicant, which is the company, will have to prove that the company has been operating for more than 2 years now, and during that 2 years time of the employment of the person who is on 457 visa, the person has met the company has met the training benchmark requirement for this each year. So the company still have to provide an evidence that they have met the training benchmark requirement in each financial year that they have got the sponsor on 457 visa. Now, apart from this, the company has to provide financial documents for last 2 years to show that the company was operating and making some profits. Also, the company will have to provide an evidence that the company has been generating revenue compared to more revenue compared to what they had when they sponsored the applicant on 457 visa. Now, the department is quite keen into looking at what contribution that the person who got the 457 visa has made towards the company's growth. For example, if the company's turnover was, let's say, a yearly turnover was $500,000. Now, if you can show that, or if your company's turnover has increased to, let's say, for example, $700,000, then you can justify that. See, because of this sponsorship, we have been able to make more profit in our business compared to what we were making before. Apart from this, the training benchmark requirement is the important part for the nomination. The reason is because the department would look for an evidence whether your company has met the training benchmark requirement for each year or not, which is, again, you'll have to provide an evidence of what was the payroll for first 1 year and then the second 1 year, and then show that in each year the company has paid at least 1% of total payroll spent at least 1% of total payroll on training of Australian employees. And the people who attended the people who attended this training were Australian citizens or permanent residents. You cannot include the people, or let's say people who are not Australian citizen or PR cannot be included in this training benchmark expenses. So or the company can show that they have just contributed 2% of the total payroll in the industrial training fund. Now, moving forward, the visa applicant has to just prove that they have completed 2 years of employment, and this does exclude any unpaid leave. This will only include the paid leaves. If you have taken a leave, that's not a problem, but it has to be a paid leave. If it is unpaid leave, you cannot count that unpaid leave towards meeting the 2 years requirement of employment on 457 visa. Now, that's all about 186 TRT. Now, one more information that I think I've missed is the English language requirement. The applicant must have at least IELTS 6 in each module or equivalent score in PTE, TOEFL, CAE. That used to be, until July 2017, that used to be IELTS 5 each. So that has changed now, and which is now 6 each in each module. Now, let's go to 186 direct entry stream. Now, in 186 direct entry stream, there are not many changes. The only thing that has changed is the occupation list. Now, the occupation list has changed, and your occupation has to be on the list in order to apply for 186 visa in the direct entry stream, which is just the MLT-SSL of 186 visa. Now, to apply for a 186 visa in direct entry stream, the applicant, this company has to again apply for a nomination and provide an evidence that the company is lawfully operating in Australia. The company has been profitably running in Australia, and they'll have to provide their registration documents, their financial documents, and etc. Now, with the nomination, again, they will also have to provide an evidence that they have done the labor market testing, like advertising the position online and trying to look for an Australian citizen. They also have to provide an evidence that the position fits in the business. They have to write an explanations and provide an evidence that they really need this position to grow their business. They will also have to provide an employment agreement. However, there is no minimum salary, but the salary has to be according to the market rate. Now, the next stage for 186 direct entry stream is the visa application. Now, the visa applicant will have to also provide an evidence that the visa applicant has a skills assessment for the occupation that they have been sponsored in, and the applicant has to have at least 3 years full-time work experience as well. Now, again, the 3 years full-time can be equivalent part-time as well. However, these 3 years could be in breaks, or let's say that it doesn't have to be continuous, but it has to be 3 years full-time. That's all about 186. But if you do still have any questions about 186 visa under TRT or direct entry stream, you can always drop a question, and our team will soon answer your questions by replying to your comments. Now, moving forward, we will also go to the 187, which is RSMS. Now, RSMS has been very well-known visa. I believe a lot of people have uh, followed this visa for a long time, but now the things have changed a lot. Now, in 187, subclass 187, which is RSMS, the process stays quite similar. However, the occupation list has changed a little bit. Now, also 187 also has two streams, which is TRT and direct entry stream. However, most of the people do go for direct entry stream compared to TRT. But people who want to go to TSS visa because they cannot meet the English language requirement, they can go to TSS, complete their employment for 3 years now because the requirements have changed, and then apply for 187 TRT stream. However, I've not seen many applicants doing these things. They generally try and meet the requirements for a direct entry stream. Now, for 187 direct entry stream, there are three stages: RCB, nomination, and visa. Now, for RCB, the applicant will have to contact, so applicant is the business in this case. The business has to contact the local RCB, which is regional certifying body, meet the requirement, whatever the requirement has been outlined on the RCB's websites, and apply for the RCB approval. And once the RCB provides the support, you can also lodge all the applications together, like RCB nomination and visa, and then upload the RCB outcome as you receive it. However, you can also do one by one, which is like lodging the RCB, get an outcome from RCB, which generally takes maybe 4 to 8 weeks in most of the RCBs. Very few RCBs takes more than 8 weeks, I would say. Now, in the RCB and nomination, then the next stage is obviously lodging the nomination. Now, that is lodged with the Department of Immigration. Now, the requirements are pretty much similar in RCB and nomination, which is providing an evidence that the company is operating lawfully in Australia by providing evidence that the company has an ABN, ACN, they have a lease agreement, they are operating lawfully in Australia by providing their business activity statement, which is called BAS, financial reports like profit and loss and balance sheet. They will also have to provide an evidence that they tried to look for an Australian citizens, like um, uh, by providing an evidence that they advertise the position and look for an Australian citizen to um, to fill this position, and they could not fill this position. That's why they are going for the sponsorship of overseas person. Now, also apart from this, the company will have to provide an position description that has to match the NZESCO course description, similar to what we discussed in 482. The applicant will also have to provide, which is the business again, that how this position is required or how this position fits in the business, why it is important for the business to grow, and how this position is going to contribute towards the business growth. Now, all this information that has to put forward in RCB, and the similar information will also go to the nomination application. Now, again, most of the RCBs do support the local businesses, so generally they do have a positive outcome. However, the nomination is the most important part for the 187 RSMS visa. In nomination, generally, the common reasons for refusals is, let's say, the company does not have a financial capacity, or the company does not seem to be able to pay the employee or the nominee for next 2 years because their financials are not that strong. So make sure before you lodge and spend this much money on lodging these applications, make sure the company's financial documents are quite strong. Now, the other reason is that the case officer or the department is not satisfied that the position fits within the business. Like, we have seen a lot of people getting a refusal as a retail manager in shops like any retail chains, like that could be any of the retail chains where the people are working in food retail chains and pizza shops and everything, or burger shops, and then they're not really they're just doing a managerial role, which is obviously store manager, but generally these applicants are getting refusals just because that the department says that this position does not fit in this business, and this is more of retail supervisor rather than retail manager. And we have seen a lot of people getting this kind of refusals. So we would recommend that to people that refrain from applying for a 187 visa as a retail manager, because you're very highly likely, very high chances that you might get a refusal for this application. Now, going forward, the next requirement is the next application is the visa application, where the applicant have to provide the evidence that the applicant has IELTS minimum 6 each, the applicant has relevant skills and qualification, and the applicant has at least 3 years work experience requirement. This has been just added recently on 18th of March 2018. Anybody lodged an application before 18th March 2018 does not need to provide an evidence that they have 3 years of full-time work experience. However, anybody lodged an application from March 2018, 18 March 2018, will have to provide an evidence that they have got at least 3 years work experience in the relevant occupation, which is related to nominated occupation that the company has nominated. Now, I believe that we have covered most of the information for 482, 186 direct entry stream and TRT, and 187 direct entry stream as well. Now, I generally have come across a lot of common questions, which is that a lot of people are confused that if I get a TSS visa, will I be able to apply for the 186 TRT or not, or permanent visa or not? Now, if your occupation is on MLTSSL and you got 4 years visa under the new TSS visa, then you can apply for 186 visa after 3 years under the TRT. If you had, as I said before, if you had a 457 visa on or before April 2017, and you've been still on 457 visa till then, until now, and you are eligible, you've completed 2 years of employment on 186 TRT application. So the difference between the TSS and 457 is that the TSS applicants will have to have an occupation on MLTSSL, and they will also have to wait for 3 years on the TSS visa in order to apply for 186 TRT, whereas the 457 applicants who held the 457 visa on or before April 2017 can directly apply for a 186 visa under TRT after 2 years, and their occupation doesn't have to be on the list. Even if their occupation is removed out of the list, they can still apply because of the grandfathering rule that is also known as transitional arrangements. Now, other questions that the people have is that, can I change my employer? So yes, you can change your employer, but your new employer will have to apply for a new sponsorship and nomination. Now, you may need to apply for a new TSS visa if your 457 visa is expiring, or it does not have sufficient time. Like, say, for example, if it is expiring in 6 months, I would recommend that you apply for a new TSS visa. But if you do have a 457 visa for next 2-3 years, so then you can just simply lodge a new sponsorship and nomination and not lodge the TSS visa, and you can still work on this TSS visa, 457 visa, after getting the new SBS and nomination approved for TSS visa from your employer. So I know it's a bit complex to understand, but I've just tried my best to explain this. Let me try and again, just to recap it, that the person who is on 457 visa and they have long-term visa left, such as they've got, let's say, a 2 years visa or something, they can directly apply for SBSN nomination with the new company, but the SBSN nomination will be for TSS visa. But you do not need to apply for a TSS visa because you already have a 457 visa valid for, let's say, next 2 years, and you don't really seem to need that. But if you do want to apply for a TSS visa, you can always apply. Like, for example, if I've just got 1 year visa and I don't think comfortable that I want to get a longer term 2 years visa or something, or 4 years visa if my occupation is on MLTSSL, it's completely fine. Now, for TSS visa, a lot of people ask that what is the IELTS requirement, which is obviously doesn't matter what, and a lot of people get confused whether, let's say, for chef, what I need, for cook, what I need. For TSS visa, doesn't matter what occupation you are in, your IELTS requirement stays the same, which is IELTS 5 overall with a minimum 4.5 for TSS visa 482. Now, further questions that we usually get is eligibility for TRT 186 visa. So a lot of people get confused if whether I can apply for TRT in 186 or not, because the rules has changed, my occupation has been removed, but they have got a visa, let's say, in 2016 or early 2017, where before my April 2017 basically. So if you have got a 457 visa approved before 2017 April, then you can apply for a 186 visa even though your occupation is removed from the list. So you don't need to worry about anything, because your occupation does not matter for 186 TRT, because the TRT still have an option of which is called a grandfathering rule, or let's say transitional arrangement, for the people who held the 457 visa at the time of the rule change in April 2017. Now, can you change the occupation? Yes, you can change the occupation, but the occupation has to be on the new list for TSS visa. If your occupation is not on the new list, Like for example, if someone was wanted to apply for an occupation which is now already removed from the list, then they cannot apply for the TSS visa, or let's say new nomination, because, or you cannot change your occupation because that occupation is no longer on the list, and you will not be able to lodge a new nomination. Now, if you changed the occupation, then you may not be able to apply for a TRT, even though you had 457 visa or something before April 2017. Now, furthermore, so these are the common questions that I have come across during my consultations. Now, the future changes that are coming very soon is the SAF, which is Skill Australian Fund, which, let's say, this training benchmark requirement will be removed very soon. And there will be a new training requirement, which is the SAF fund, where the applicant will, or the company has to just donate the money into the government's funding, and the government will use this towards training the non-Australian employees. Now, this has passed on 19th of May 2018 in the Parliament, and now it will be implemented in first quarter of 2018-19 financial year, which is probably July to September. And also there are few changes coming up in labor market testing. At the moment for TSS, or let's say in the past for 457 visa, there was no requirement that the company has to advertise the position for a certain period. Now the requirement is changing from probably next quarter, which is that the company has to advertise the position for at least 4 weeks. The company will also have to advertise. So in the old rule or current rule, let's say, or in the 457 visa as well, it used to be that the labor market testing could have been done in last 12 months time. Now it is going to be shortened, and it is going to be within last 4 months time. So if I'm lodging the nomination today, then my in the new rule it will be like that your advertisement has to be done in last 4 months only, and for at least 4 weeks. If you have not advertised the position for 4 weeks, you would probably not meet the requirement that you've done a labor market testing, or the labor market testing requirement will not be met. And you will not satisfy this requirement, so that your nomination may not be approved. Also, the company, when advertising the position, will have to outline the skills and the experience required for the position. So they'll have to include a lot of things in their LMT reports and LMT, like when they advertise the position, just to show that they have done followed the correct process to do the labor market testing, and they have genuinely tried to look for an Australian citizens or permanent residents. That's all about the employer-sponsored visas. I hope that this information has helped you with understanding of the 482 visa and the 186 visa and 187. If you still have any questions, you can always put your questions in the comment box, and we will try and answer your questions as soon as we can. Also, we will be very soon online with the information about the skill visa, which is the 190 nomination, which the Australian Capital Territory is going to change the nomination criteria for 190 visa, and a lot of people will be affected by these changes. And as soon as we are aware of those changes, as soon as we become aware of those changes, we will come back live and provide those information as well. So please stay tuned, and we might be able to give you those information very soon. If you still have any questions, as we said before, you can put your questions in the inbox, or please feel free to visit our offices near to you, and our experienced migration agents can help you with your questions and complex cases where the 457 or 482 or 167 or 117 visas, where you have a lot of questions, or you might not be sure of what requirements you need to meet in order to apply for this visa. You can always visit our office, and our team can always help you out. So thank you very much for joining us today, and hopefully we will see you very soon. Thank you.